Hello, everyone. I am Tracie Jones. I am the Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. And this is actually our last event in our series for Black History Month. So I am so excited that I have Stephen Chambers with me here today to kind of talk about his passion when it comes to education. So Stephen, love for you to introduce yourself, what program you're in, where you're from, and then I'll take it from there.
Sounds good. Thank you, Tracie, for having me and for inviting me. I'm really excited about this too, the conversation, but just the series in general. My name is Stephen Chambers. I have to say Stephen A. Chambers now because there's another person in our cohort in our program who has the name Stephen Chambers, so I have to designate. So I'm in the EDLD program, the Doctor of Education Leadership, and the other Stephen Chambers is a first year. I'm a third year. And so I'm currently in the New York City area working in residency with the New York City Department of Education. But I'm originally from Columbus, Ohio, born and raised. In terms of education, I went to a private Christian elementary school and public middle and high school. And I claim Houston, Texas as my second home because I spent 10 years of my professional life there before I came to Harvard as a elementary school teacher, a pastor, and a college access counselor for the Houston Independent School District. So I'm really excited to be in a new city and in a new season and looking forward to this conversation.
Awesome. I'm so excited about talking to you because I always hear such amazing things about you and how you hold space in community and just make people feel validated. So I'm so glad we're ending this season with you. So I say this is Black History Month, but we all know Black history is every day, all day. But just want to shout it out. I got my Harvard Black History Month sweatshirt.
I love it.
Folks can still get it. It is at the Harvard shop. So if you didn't get one and you want one, please head over to the Harvard shop.
Will do.
You know what I was thinking about? I was like, this is third year. It's a double pandemic. You are in New York City DOE. How has the EDLD program prepared you for this residency?
Wow, you coming out with the big guns first. Well, for those who don't know, the New York City Department of Ed is the largest school district in the country. We serve close to 1 million students now because of the pandemic, 1.1 before. And now I think there's so much that's happening in the city and in education as a sector that you have to be very flexible, very nimble as a practitioner, but also as a system leader. And I would say that the EDLD program has prepared me in a lot of ways. One, in reflection to those characteristics, they've taught me to be flexible and adaptive. As Heifetz says, you can be rigid, you can be flexible, and you have to be flexible when you are leading in a school district, but also when you're leading in the midst of a pandemic, a health pandemic, and then obviously we're dealing with ongoing racial tensions and systemic racism. So being able to maneuver not only the individuals that I come in contact with virtually, because I've still not met the people I've been working with all school year in person, and then also the systems that are oppressive and that have the potential to further instigate and suppress people, like communities. And one of my, one of the passions that I have as an educator is to ensure that marginalized communities, in particular Black communities, African American communities, have the access and the resources and the advocacy in their voices to fight for what they need, for what we need. And that is there's not always a platform for that. And so my work is ensuring that there is, and my work is ensuring that with the programs that we roll out. So my strategic project here is called Outdoor Learning, and basically I've created a program where all schools in the district, private, charter, public, can apply to have streets closed, park permits, and use outdoor schoolyards to have classes. And that basically mitigates the risk of the spread of COVID-19. But then there's also the threat of some communities are not safe outdoors. And so although you might be reducing the risk of one pandemic, you might be exacerbating or increasing the risk of another. And that other being how communities are forced into certain spaces because of redlining and racism that puts them at risk of crime and increases of just the effects of crime and the effects of poverty. So what I'm always thinking about is how to serve marginalized communities in the ways that they need served, not in the ways that everybody needs served. So outdoor learning is a great program for the entire district and for the entire city, but for some communities, and I'm not saying all Black communities are poor and crime ridden, but for some communities, and this is from the mouths of parents and principals, that's not the program for them. So thinking about what the program is for them is what I believe the work of being an equity warrior, as Deborah Jewel Sherman says, and that is like one of my favorite people in the world, who has also prepared me for this time in this season with her leadership and her just her how she teaches and how she influences the work that we're doing now in residency.
Yeah, shout out to DJS.
That's right. That's right. DJS.
Yeah, but you know what was funny? I didn't know you implemented outdoor learning, and one of our alum, Braylon Lombard, actually had an outdoor learning classroom in Brooklyn.
Are you serious?
Yeah, she posted it on Instagram, and I was like,
yes, we need to talk. I need to talk to her. Yeah, can we make that connection? Because I want to actually I'm writing about that in my capstone, and I would love to have especially somebody who graduated from Hugsy be a part of the sound bites or the captures in my cap. That would be dope. Yes, please.
Most definitely will connect you. So I'm glad we started talking about this double pandemic, because I think this is unprecedented. It is really impacting the Black community. I'm from New York, I'm from Queens. And so being connected to my family and understanding the challenges with New York City DOE, being at the district level and being at the actual school level is so different. How do you convey to families to advocate for themselves? Because it's important, yet they're not connected to you.
Yeah, that is so hard. That is actually the problem of practice of my capstone, is finding ways, especially in a pandemic, finding ways for families that aren't usually comfortable advocating for themselves or even feeling that they're knowledgeable enough to come face to face with district leaders or politicians, and finding organizations and entities that they can connect with that can mobilize their voice or give them the power to speak and to share their thoughts. So as individuals, as an individual family, you may not feel that you have the power or that you have even the language to advocate for your student. But if you're connected to an organization that is organized around those issues, then you can leverage that organizational power, their language, their knowledge to, advocate for yourself and for your community. So that's one way that just in general, and especially in my time working in Houston, that is what I try to do a lot of. And I know working as a pastor, we were very much connected to school districts, and I was in there fighting for our parents and fighting for our students like I was one of them. So I know that there needs to be spaces created for families to do that and organizations to do that. In a pandemic, I think it's even harder. I will say that I think that the DOE does a really good job of trying to create space for parents to come into contact with district administrators. And so there's community roundtables that have taken place every Friday. through our family and community empowerment department. And I try to attend those every week to not only share information about the outdoor learning program, but just to hear what parents are saying, just to hear what students are saying, and even school staff, because I think a lot of times school staff don't have their voices heard as well, unless they're connected to a labor union and they're very active in that union. It's kind of like there's a disconnect there too, and that's not a DOE thing. I think that's more of just an ed sector thing.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like that's in higher education as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, I was just thinking about, what you said, and I've heard from folks that you are a healer in all that you do. So, can you speak to that healing aspect when it comes to education?
Oh man, that is quite a title. I do consider myself to be a healer, and the way I use that phrase is I see people and I see systems and I see social systems, but also just like formal systems. And I think that there's brokenness in both. I think people I don't believe people are broken, but I think people experience brokenness. And those experiences come from a lot of things: how they've been socialized, how they've been raised, how we've been traumatized, how we've been exposed and socialized to language and mindsets that really just devalue who we are. And I believe this is true for everybody, not just Black people, not just people of color. I believe that everybody experiences some level of brokenness. And what I feel called to is responding to that in trying to heal. And so the ways that I've tried to heal is as a classroom teacher. I taught fourth and fifth grade, and I felt like those were literally my children. Like I was not only trying to teach them curriculum, but I was trying to teach them self-development. I was trying to teach them about pride in themselves and just what it means to be confident and to have the knowledge and the competencies to support that pride. Because sometimes people come in and I'm proud, but I'm empty. And I mean, like not in a not in a bad way, but I want you to have some substance. So, and I believe that's where we get a lot of respect, when we have substance that matches our confidence. And I think one of the things that Black people and young Black youth in particular need to understand is that, yes, please have confidence, please have pride, and be diligent about having competence. And if you don't know how to access that, which is the case in a lot of ways, that's the beauty of community. And I think that if you are privileged enough to have some competencies and knowing how to have access and empowerment, you have to use your power to help other people. And so I was raised to be a reaching as we climb person. So if you get something, you reach back and you make sure somebody else has that. That's how I was raised. I mean, I went to after school program that was literally called Village to Child, and it was just like the whole theme is just like we had like tribal names in our groups, and it was just very like yeah, it's like very. So I'm really serious about communities and making sure that we all have something. Like I am not the person that's gonna be like, and there's nothing against it, like driving to be like the luxury cars or having huge houses. There's nothing against that for me. But in my life, I don't need that. What I do need is for people in my community to have access to what they need. And that's really all that I feel like I'm put on this earth to do. And so doing that in classrooms is one way, but then I've also worked as a youth pastor in Houston for about a year and a half, which was probably one of my favorite jobs. I went from children's pastor, which is like the young elementary school kid, to youth pastor, which is the high schoolers. And I love them. I love them. I probably should have taught high school instead of elementary, because all them systems and stuff, it was just too much for me. I was just like, I don't care if you're in line or not. Like, I just don't care. Just like learn. So, but being a youth pastor was so fulfilling because you see young people like in their identities and on the brink of the next phase of life, which is like this is who I'm going to be. These are the steps that I want to take to get to who I want to be. And then I was an associate pastor, so like the assistant pastor for the whole church, and planted a second church for our campus. And in that role, I was able to work with their parents and with adults. And so for me, be like living and serving in that spectrum of elementary to adulthood, and learning that a 5-year-old has a lot of the same needs that a 65-year-old needs. Like a lot of people just want to be listened to. They want their story to be heard. They want to feel like you're connecting to them. They want to feel seen. And if you can help them, one, by being that person who sees and hears them, but then two, by helping them understand, and this is what I love about the EDLD program and the adult development curriculum, which we call PLIO, is that you learn that you don't necessarily need other people to offer you value. And that is something that shifted a paradigm for me, because although I'll, say I'm a healer and love to do all this healing, I needed some healing of my own. And going to therapy and having an executive coach my first year, and a peer coach my second year, and just really diving into the adult development curriculum with Lisa Leahy, Adria Goodson, the Immunity to Change map. It's really been transformational for me. And I've learned that I can self-author, as we say, our reality. And the way we're socialized is just that. And what people try to project onto me or us is a reflection of how they see themselves and how they've been socialized. So if I'm able to take myself out of that bubble of socialization and say, hey, I see what's happening here and I don't agree, then that to me is saying I'm above in the sense I'm above the social sphere, in that I choose how I want to show up in the world, and I choose what my value is. There's nothing you say or do that will change that. And because that's so transformational to me, I want everybody to have that. So like, I'll be honest, like my Christmas gift for my family after the first year, I took them through the Immunity to Change map. I set them down and projected on my laptop and said, hey, everybody get your hand out. You're going to do some Immunity to Change, and followed up with them. And I did, like this past Christmas, we did a part 2, because I wanted to see, if they made progress on the first one, and to sharpen any skills they wanted to have. I mean, Tracie, like my whole thing is I can't have stuff. I can't have resources. I can't be healed if the people around me are not. Like that just doesn't, that's not congruent with my faith, and it's not congruent with just who I am. So that's what I do.
You just said a word. I'm just like, woo. I took adult development with Bob Keegan right before he retired. And Lisa Leahy, like we just sometimes just have these conversations about life and, race and immunity to change and how it might show up different culturally. Just some amazing conversations when we think about how our culture actually influences the way in which we socialize. So I appreciate bringing that in the conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah, I so agree with that. I'm so glad you said that. The layer of race too. And there's another tool that I love, is the scarf threats, which is when you can tell when you're triggered or not. And when you said the race piece, I find that a lot of my friends and cohort mates, we all have one threat in mind, like in common. You can have a lot of the other threats, but we all have the fairness threat, because it's like, how they get that and we ain't get, like, where did y'all get that? Like, that is like, if you are raised in a generation and in a country, in a global society where your people are always getting the short end of the stick, then that is just an immediate trigger. And that is something that I always try to keep present, that yes, we have these professional tools and we have these educational tools, but there's some cultural stuff
Yeah.
that is just like a part of who we are. That's the socialization piece, because these social systems have been telling us for generations and generations that we're less than.
Yeah.
And now it's like, for me, like the work is also pushing against that narrative and saying I'm not less than, and if anything, I'm like very magical. So,
I
so
love
the
the
fact,
magical healer.
like the fact that my ancestors survived Middle Passage, and we are continuing to survive the oppressive systems in this country, and I somehow end up at Harvard, like that is magic. Like that is, of course, community and access and divine intervention. Some people call it luck, but that is magic to do that, and to actually like not only survive those systems, but to show signs of thriving in a system that's not built for you.
Yeah. I mean, thriving, that is the key word. Like, to maintain that sense of optimism, to thrive. My dissertation, I'm working on that right now. It is how do Black women make meaning of thriving at an Ivy Graduate School of Education. So I'm just putting it out there because that dissertation.
I didn't know that. I'm glad you said that.
Yes.
Congrats.
Start as a framework and portraiture as my methodology.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I would love to read that.
I will
hear more.
Everyone read it when it is finished.
I know that's right. On every blog post, social media post. Y'all know how to defend it, right?
But you know what? A question I have for you is, you come to the ed school with one thought of like why you came, how you're going to change education. Now you're in your residency. Once again, like this is unprecedented. So it's not like other residencies that our students have done. And you're on the cusp of graduating. What's changed? And what has stayed the same?
That is a difficult question. It's difficult because I came not knowing what impact I was going to make when I left this place. And I still don't know. So that's what stayed the same. I think what changed is knowing that I have more tools and a broader network to make decisions with that in mind. So to respond to that question, I have people, I have tools that can help me answer that question, and maybe offer some inspiration along the way. I think for me, it's not I don't know how, it's I don't know where to focus.
Okay.
Because I have an interest in a lot of areas, and I have a passion for quite a few areas, and I want to make sure that this next season is one where I'm maximizing time, and I'm maximizing the timeliness of what this season is. So one way to kind of like illustrate that is, there was an article in New York Times a couple weeks ago where it was mentioning that there are record numbers of students that are committing suicide.
Yeah.
And I am very sensitive to the value of life, and I just have a heart for young people in general. And hearing that just broke my heart. And dang, it's about to like make me cry now. And it feels like an urgent need. There needs to be a response to that, but not only the capture of suicide, but just the traumas that young people are experiencing in general, being kind of like confined to remote learning and confined to home spaces that are not always healthy and not always conducive to learning. And I really want to do something in that space, but I don't just want to be a Band-Aid.
Right.
And I don't want to just be, I've founded mentoring programs, and I've worked with parents in counseling, and just, I don't want to just do that. So I'm thinking about a way or ways to make a systemic impact that can speak to trauma, and that can really like make some long lasting change.
Mm-hmm.
But I also just like need to see some immediate change
Yeah.
because there's so much urgency in what people need right now. And I feel, and I don't believe that my trajectory has been coincidental. So my bachelor's degree is in business marketing. My
Oh,
master's degree is in divinity, and now I'm in the education school getting a doctorate. And all the
and leadership.
yeah, and leadership and all the experiences along the way, I believe are creating a package that can be used to respond to our right now. I don't
Mm-hmm.
believe that I came in cohort 9. I don't believe that I'm about to graduate in 2021. I don't believe that all of this is happening around a pandemic by coincidence. That's
Mm-hmm.
just not how I roll through the world. And
Mm-hmm.
so because I believe that everything is happening for a reason and that I'm positioned in this space and time for a reason, that I have to be very intentional about listening to the divine about what that next step is. And that's what I'm doing now. I'm grateful that the Lenten season has fallen during the same time that I'm writing a capstone.
Sure enough.
And I think we finished Lent like a week before I defend. So my hope is by then I'll have some, greater clarity. And I always tell people I have like this, I call it the theology of options, where
Mm.
I basically give my best effort in multiple streams. So right now that looks like applying in different areas, different sectors that all connect to my purpose, I believe, and passion, but don't really define one path. And so the theology part of that is you put your best foot forward in multiple paths, and then you let, for me, God do the rest.
Mm.
And that's kind of how I've been moving, like for the past 15 years. That's how I've been moving.
It's work.
It's been working. It's been stress at some points, I will say. There were some rough patches in Houston, but I really believe that whatever it looks like after I finish this program, I know that it will be on purpose, and I'm not stressed about it. I'm not concerned, but I'm really thinking a lot about what that is and
Mm-hmm.
how to leverage this program and the resources that came with it and the people and just the learnings and reflections to really like maximize it and use it, not just to say, oh, I went to Harvard or oh, I have a
Right.
doctorate, but to say like, oh, I can show you how to self-author, or I can show you how to work through an immunity to change map, or I can, all the things that come with the program, I think are bigger than the name itself.
I totally agree with you, and I appreciate that you see that in the EDLD program, that
Absolutely.
you take so much away from it. Um, you know, we have a record number of master students this year because of our second admit. So I wonder if you could share just two tidbits of advice, because they're graduating the same time as you. They're
Mhm.
graduating into a pandemic. And I'll say for our Black students, they are struggling with what is happening in the country and being situated in their homes online. So
Mhm.
you're the healer. If you could just give us two pieces of advice that they can take.
Yeah, I mean, I would say to our master students in general, um, leverage the brand to change the world. Because what I've seen, and not just master students, but what I've seen from other brands similar, and even the brand of Harvard in the world in the work is it's not always communal, and it's not always in service of healing and helping, or
Mm.
even leveraging the tools, resources, and privilege of being at Harvard to help someone else. And I'm not, it's hard for me to say I'm not advocating for everybody to be a community servant, but I am.
Yeah,
because,
in one way or another.
because I am. I just I don't believe in just people who are self-centered, or it's hard. I have a really hard time with that. And so it really, really like kind of irritates not only my personality, but I believe it also like it taints the brand. It taints the work that we're doing in the space. It taints the learning that people really are trying to make about a system that could use a lot of changing, that could actually use a lot of transforming. And instead, there are people, I believe, coming from spaces like, I won't say Harvard, but spaces just like Harvard. Actually, I will. There are people from Harvard that are going into into the workforce and that are trying to be the best practitioner in a corrupt system. And so I want people to come into that system and not just like go along to get along and, you know, shine your nice degree and make your way up the ladder, but actually like look at what the problems are in that system, use your privilege and change it. Like don't like change the system. And I think we have the power to do that. We have like the social power, the brand power. We have the numbers now to do that. So I just really, really push and encourage people to be change agents. And that's the big takeaway for me. I'd say for the Black students, especially the Black master students, I believe the same is true there. I also believe that we have an even greater responsibility. And it's not fair because I think that sometimes we just have so much on our own personal plates that it's hard to be Black and the Black person from Harvard. And so it's a lot. There's a lot of responsibility. My advice would be to get a good therapist. Very practical advice. And I really believe in therapy. And although I am a religious practitioner and a religious leader, I'm not the minister pastor that says just go to take it to Jesus and that's all you need. I'm like, you can take it to your faith and
both.
Let's go to therapy too.
Yeah.
And your pastor's not always the best therapist. So find a professional therapist to pair with your religious practice, whatever that might be. And get some therapy. Because I think going into this workforce in this season is going to be taxing. It is taxing already on mental health, on spiritual health, emotional health. And if you don't have those foundations and those systems in place to sustain you, it will break you. And coming from somebody who could not get out of the bed during one season of pastoring because of anxiety and burnout, you have got to get your self-care in check before you go out here trying to change the world. And I know a lot of us coming out of this program, especially those of us that are Black, our communities are looking to us to be those change agents. And if we don't have those systems in place, it's not going to be, it's just not going to be good for us. So I really, really encourage folks to get into some therapy and get some good friends around you who you can, if you feel like you've been code switching 365, that you can flip the switch off and just kick it. Like, look, I just need to tell you what happened today. And I definitely have those friends in my program. And I have those people who we don't have to put on the EDLD language. We don't have to put on the Harvard language. We can just be. And I think that is a space of therapy as well. It's not in place of the professional therapy, but it is a space that can be therapeutic. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Great pieces of advice. And I appreciate your vulnerability and transparency because I think many times, in our culture, we don't talk about therapy. We don't talk about mental health. We're just told to power through it. And I think it's important to name that. So thank you for doing that.
I agree.
Before I let you go, I just want you to share, one thing that you think about when you're talking about Black excellence. What is that?
Oof. Honestly, I think Black excellence is Black effort. I think if you can wake up every day and say you've given 100% of what you know, 100% of your capacity to just be, and be meaning like to be authentically yourself, to live in your skin, to own your skin, to be proud of your skin, but not just your literal skin, the cultures that come connected to that. And for me, my family, my ancestors are my heroes. My grandfather always says, tough times don't last, but tough people do. And that is like one of the quotes that just always motivates me. And it reminds me that, you know, you can go through struggles, you can go through trauma, but if you know inside of yourself that you are created in the image of a creator, and that you have power beyond social systems, and that your purpose is bigger than the individual, like the humans that you see. I just really think Black excellence is living into that and knowing that we're bigger and we're greater than how people try to reduce us.
Wow, that is a powerful way for me to end this series. Thank you so much, Stephen
Thank you,
Chambers.
Tracie.
Wishing you all the best. I will be following you in the ed sector.
Thank you.
Um, and are you
Hopefully I can see you in person before I cross this.
But you know what? If I can't see you in person because of the, staying online, no, in-person commencement, I believe you will be in New York City DOE, even though you don't know where you're going.
Let's be praying on that together.
My people are in New York, so
yeah, no, yeah.
eventually see you.
And I didn't know that before now that you were from New York. So knowing that connection is pretty cool too. So
yeah, we to the High School of Art and Design. That's a whole
oh yeah,
yes,
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Tracie. Thank you for this time and just for your leadership.
Thank you. I love y'all. And
love you too.
Stay connected.
Will do.
All right. Bye.
Take care.